Hello, my name's Simon Kerins. It's Friday the 27th of July 2012, and in just a few hours' time, the 30th Games of the Modern Olympiad will be launched at the Olympic Stadium in London. In the meantime, I'm delighted to welcome you to the second edition of the new look Sports Call. If you tuned in last week, thanks for tuning back in this week, and if you're a brand new listener, welcome to the concept of Sports Call. It's good to have you on board the programme. Many thanks for all the positive comments that were forthcoming after last week's show. I'm glad that so many of you enjoyed it, regardless of whether you were listening for the first time or if you were a regular listener to Sports Call between August 2009 and September 2010. Coming up on the programme this week, we've got the usual range of sporting chat, including a number of comments that have been submitted by you, the listeners. Of course, this is not going out live, which is why I made the comment at the start of the show regarding the Olympics. It's currently just coming up to 5 o'clock this Friday afternoon. This is the time at which I'm recording this week's show. So by the time you do access this recording, it could be Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We could even be into August 2012, and the Olympics will be well and truly underway. But right now, as of this Friday afternoon, that is all to come. So I'll be taking the opportunity to look forward to the Olympics, which are going to be the talk of the town over the course of the next 16 or 17 days. But this programme is not all about the Olympics. It is, however, all about sport. That's why it's called Sports Call. We need you to get in touch. Even though the show is not going out live, you can submit comments for inclusion on future programmes. You can find out how you can get involved with future programmes, be it as a listener, a contributor, or perhaps even as a sponsor. All that to come. Along with a review of the sporting week, the latest goings-on at Blackburn Rovers, Burnley and Accrington Stanley, roundups from the Ribblesdale and Lancashire cricket leagues, fans' thoughts, your opportunity to share your sporting news and views, likes and dislikes. I'll be talking about guest slots and notices, your opportunity to either feature on the programme, recommend someone to get involved as a guest, or submit the goings-on at your sports club, your gym, or perhaps share with us your record triple jump leap, or your record break at snooker, or anything like that. It doesn't have to be on a grand scale, but if it is on a grand scale, then all the more reason for A, you to send it in, and B, all the more reason for me to talk about it. And if you are listening to the show for the first time, then I'm delighted to tell you that we do have a website that complements, well, hopefully complements, what we do here on these Sports Call broadcasts. That website is www.simonkerins.sportscall, SIMONKERINSSPORTSCALL.webeden, WEBEDEN.co.uk. And if you're thinking, well, why has he felt it necessary to spell Simon Kerins Sports Call for us, you would be amazed at the number of people who misspell it and get it wrong and send messages for our attention, and they never actually come through. The correct email address to which to send your contributions is simonkerinssportscall@gmail.com. simonkerinssportscall@gmail.com. But of course, this broadcast is available via Facebook, so if you're a Facebook friend of mine, you can get in touch via Facebook. Equally, if you know my mobile phone number, you're very welcome to send me a text. The bottom line is, if you get your comments to me during the course of a given week, then rest assured I will include those very same comments when I record the next week's programme. Okay, a roundup of the sporting week will be getting underway soon. We will be taking a particularly close look at the build-up to the Olympic Games. Of course, it's just over 7 years since we learned that the Olympics would be held in London in this sporting year of 2012. A lot has happened in the build-up to today. A lot will happen, of course, over the course of the next 16-17 days. And if you haven't had a chance to submit your comments and predictions for the Olympics in time to make this programme, rest assured you have 2 more opportunities to do so next week and the following week. We'll be taking a look at cycling, in which Britain is dominating at the moment, both on the track and on the road. We'll be taking a look back at the first test at the Oval. You'll recall me telling you last week that England and South Africa are doing battle in a 3-test series to decide the world's top team. And if you are a cricket enthusiast, you won't need me to tell you, but things haven't exactly gone to plan for England thus far, but who knows, that might all be about to change. So without further ado, let us set the scene for what promises to be an extremely exciting and special Olympic Games held in our capital city of London. Very exciting times for the country, and I know some people have confessed to me that they have not exactly come down with Olympic fever just yet, but I'm sure when push comes to shove, as it will do in just a few hours' time, most people in the country will be finding a TV in the vicinity and at the very least keeping tabs on the opening ceremony for the 2012 Olympic Games. Now, as I said a few moments ago, we learnt back in 2005 that London had been selected as the host venue for the games of the 30th Modern Olympiad. Let me just take a moment to refresh your memory, to transport you back in a time machine, if you like, to the 6th of July 2005. Now, the following day, 7th of July 2005, 7/7 for short, obviously synonymous with the terrorist atrocities that rocked London, killing 52 innocent people in the process. That morning in London, the weather was blissful by all accounts. The sun was out, the sky was blue, it was warm. Londoners had a spring in their step, having heard the news that they would be hosting the 30th Olympic Games in 2012. That decision, made by the International Olympic Committee in Singapore, worked out as follows. And I just think it would be worthwhile to refresh your memory, or in some cases inform you as to what happened. There were 5 nations, 5 host cities potentially bidding. London, obviously representing Great Britain, the French capital Paris, Madrid in Spain, New York in the USA, and Moscow in Russia. They were the 5 cities bidding to get the nod to host the 2012 Olympics. And in the first round of voting, London topped the bill, but just by 1 vote. London 22 votes, Paris 21, Madrid 20, New York 19, and having polled only 15 votes, Moscow were eliminated at Stage 1. Stage 2 saw the elimination of New York on 16 votes. Paris dropped down to 3rd spot with 25. London slipped to 2nd on 27, as Madrid won the 2nd round of voting quite comfortably with 32 votes. And yet it was Madrid who were to go out in the 3rd stage. They polled 31 votes and were eliminated. Paris on 33, London returning to top spot on 39. So, the final round of voting came down to a straight fight between London and Paris. And just to clarify, the International Olympic Committee members from countries with candidate cities were ineligible to vote whilst their candidates were still in contention. So, the final round of voting, and Paris, remember, were favourites at the start of the process, and they were very confident about taking the Olympic Games to France. However, as we all know, London got the vote. London carried the day, 54 votes to 50. And the 2012 Games, by decree, were going to be in London. Amazing. The event out in Singapore, of course, captured the attention of everybody around the world. And of course, there was a major event in London. A lot of VIPs gathering to eagerly await the results. And the jubilation, the scenes of jubilation, will remain with me forever. And I'm sure if you're a sports fan, you will remember what you were doing on Wednesday, the 6th of July 2005. And of course, just less than 24 hours later, that jubilation and joy was shattered by what happened in those terrorist atrocities. And as a native Londoner, I mightn't live there anymore, but I'm still an extremely proud Londoner. I'm delighted to see the Games in London for the first time in my life. Of course, it is not the first time that London has played host to the Olympic Games. They hosted the Games in 1908, and again just after the Second World War, known as the Austerity Games, in 1948. Some would say, of course, that these would be better off being labelled the Austerity Games, given the position we're in economically at the current time. But 1948 Games were known as the Austerity Games, mainly because nothing new was built for the Olympics, whereas this time we've had £9 billion of public money, at least, spent on developing not just the Olympic Stadium in Stratford in the East End of London, but also the neighbouring area, the Olympic Park and the Athletes' Village. And basically, in a nutshell, it has created a brand new opportunity for the East End of London. I'm not an East Ender, although I do, of course, support West Ham United. And West Ham, despite various twists and turns, remain the favourites to, in some way, shape or form, God knows what that will be, but somehow to be the prime movers in terms of driving forward the legacy of the Olympic Stadium. Obviously, the decision was taken that, quite rightly in my opinion, that if you're going to have an Olympic Stadium focusing on track and field athletics, then certainly any legacy should incorporate track and field athletics. West Ham hopeful that they will be able to move from Upton Park in a couple of years' time to the 60,000 all-seater Olympic Stadium. Various debates going on around that as we speak. A story that is likely to run for some time to come. Hopefully, Team GB's runners will be running for some time to come and doing very well in the process. What are your thoughts on the Olympic Games in terms of how Team GB will fare? Various medal targets have been bandied about from a whole range of sports, but I think it's fair to say that most people will be interested in the athletics, the cycling, and perhaps the swimming as well. Cycling and swimming, two sports in which we have done particularly well in the recent past, not least in cycling, where only last week, well, we're coming to that story, so I think you know what I'm going to say when we move on to that in a few moments' time. It was great, incidentally, to watch Boris Johnson, the Mayor of London, last night, really bigging up London, really selling the event in front of a crowd of 60,000 delighted people in Hyde Park. And of course, the American presidential candidate Mitt Romney has been in London recently, and he was playing a very, well, downbeat image in terms of the London Olympics, certainly painting not exactly a gleaming, glossy picture of the organisation of the event and how he felt things would pan out. There have, of course, been one or two setbacks thus far. One thinks of the G4S security issues. We think, too, of the length of time to take arriving athletes from Heathrow Airport to the Olympic Village. I think the complaint from the Australian contingent, or at least some of the Australian contingent, was that the journey had taken them 3 hours. And let us not forget either the rather farcical scenes that were played out at Hampden Park in Glasgow on Wednesday evening, when the North Korean ladies team stood for the national anthem, and, well, as they were getting ready to do so, they found that all the faces or the images of their players on the big screen were accompanied by, yes, you've guessed it, a flag of South Korea. Any other country in the world, and they wouldn't have been delighted, but they probably would have, well, not so much turned a blind eye, but grudgingly accepted the mistake. But North Korea and South Korea, two nations that are, for want of a better term, at loggerheads constantly, and that was enough to have them walking off the field before the game had started. Play did, well, get underway an hour later than originally planned, and of course the various powers that be have issued sincere apologies to North Korea and confirmed that everything will be done to ensure there are no such mistakes made over the course of the next 17 days. We sincerely hope not, and we hope instead that when we do come to look back at the London 2012 games, we're doing so on various levels, all of them positive. In other words, Team GB has acquitted itself extremely well. World records have been set. Everyone's had a good time. And in terms of the infrastructure and the logistics, we all hope that the organisation has been perfect, apart, of course, from the teething problems to which I have just referred. So, what are your predictions and hopes for 2012? Well, obviously, I hope that everything runs smoothly. I also hope, without going into too much detail, that everything goes safely. I think you might know what I'm alluding to there, given London and the history of that week back in July 2005. In terms of individual achievements, well, I would be delighted to see Victoria Pendleton win gold. She is, of course, one of our many cycling champions, taking part in what is likely to be her last Olympic Games. The same is true of Sir Chris Hoy, who, as we speak, remains in contention to, well, do the honours. He will be carrying the flag. There were rumours he would also be involved in lighting the Olympic torch in the stadium, but the smart money seems to be now on 4-minute mile legend Sir Roger Bannister. Honourable mention too for Lord Coe, but I think he probably has enough on his plate in terms of organising the event. Daley Thompson has been suggested as well as a contender to do that, but Sir Chris Hoy, cycling legend, he's hopefully going to be in the medals once again this time, along with heptathlete Jessica Ennis and 5 and 10,000 metre ace Mo Farah. I'm just mentioning those names. I could quite easily go through the whole caboodle of Team GB athletes, but I won't do. I think they're people that I would be really pleased to see taking gold in 2012. And of course we will talk more about the Olympics when we look at cycling in a few minutes' time. So if you want to get involved in terms of talking about not just your Olympic predictions and hopes, whether you think Usain Bolt of Jamaica will return to form and succeed in the 1 and indeed 200 metres, and any other observation, any other suggestion, any view you've got, you know what to do. Get in touch with me. You can get in touch via Facebook. You can get in touch via text message if you know my mobile phone number. And the email address is simonkerrinssportscall@gmail.com. That's simonkerrinssportscall@gmail.com. Get in touch with me and I will spread the word and ensure that your comments are read out on next week's programme. Moving on then to cycling, it's been a fantastic period for British cycling, culminating last Sunday on the Champs-Élysées in Paris, when Bradley Wiggins became the first ever British winner of the Tour de France. Not only did he become the first British winner, but his Team Sky and British teammate Froome came second. A fantastic achievement for him, well placed, some would say, to go on and win the Tour de France next year, although Mr. Wiggins might just want to defend his title before that happens. And Mark Cavendish, the sprinting superstar from the Isle of Man, he led home the field on Sunday, the 4th time he has won the final leg, the 4th time in succession indeed, but he has won the final leg of the Tour de France. He also represents Team Sky, so if you're a Great Britain cycling fan, and if you're a supporter or involved with Team Sky in any way, you must be walking on air even now. And of course, it's worth putting Bradley Wiggins' achievement into context. I have to be honest, I've always followed cycling without being a particularly avid enthusiast of it, but in recent times I've got more interested in the sport. And you think of the velodrome and how dangerous that can be when you've got the camber going up and down and so on, and you may have multiple cyclists colliding, or certainly at risk of collision. That can be extremely dangerous. But when you think about these hikes in the Pyrenees and well, you haven't got a phase of the race called King of the Mountains for nothing. One false move, and it's not just a case of being out of the race, it's quite conceivably being out of life's race and suffering a fatal accident. I know it's sadly happened in the past, but fortunately not on this occasion, and all more credit to Wiggins and co for their endurance, and to be riding these races virtually every day for 3 weeks and over 1 or 2 rest days scattered around. But essentially you are working hard every single day for several hours. It's not like playing 90 minutes once or twice a week. It's not like playing a couple of rounds of tennis every so often. This is proper endurance, a real test of sport, a real test of mind, body and application, which is why so many people are saying that Bradley Wiggins ought to be made Sir Bradley Wiggins at the earliest opportunity in view of his great success. I would say there's a very strong possibility, a very strong probability even, that will happen. However, some of you might think that that would be too early to give him the honour. Then again, there are parallels in the past for people being rewarded at a very high level almost instantly after they have achieved great success. So let me know where you stand on the Bradley Wiggins issue, or the Bradley Wiggins knighthood issue, to be more precise. Certainly, if you're based here in Lancashire, you might just know a little bit more about Bradley Wiggins than the average person in the UK. Although he was born in Belgium, the son of an Australian cyclist, and we won't go into too much detail. I know it's been a pretty difficult start in life for Bradley Wiggins in certain respects. Bradley Wiggins, born in Belgium to an Australian father, raised in North London, but his home has been in Lancashire, Eccleston, near Chorley, for a number of years, and he is frequently seen cycling around the Trough of Bowland, not very far away from here in the beautiful Ribble Valley. And apparently he's extremely courteous, extremely gracious when he comes into contact with members of the public, and that in itself is a plus. That sets him apart, of course, from many sports people who are not exactly the best of company when their fans approach them just requesting autographs or a brief chat. They can get slapped down, blanked, ignored, call it what you will. My understanding is Bradley Wiggins always makes time for people who want to chat or want to congratulate him on his latest success, which so happens to be the 2012 Tour de France. Who knows, in a few weeks' time we might be congratulating him again on another Olympic success. And let us not forget that Wiggins has been a regular Olympic winner for Britain. He's not just emerged onto the scene. He's 33 years of age, and he won his first Olympic gold in Sydney back in the year 2000. So well done to Bradley Wiggins, well done to Richard Froome, well done to Mark Cavendish and Team Sky. And I'm sure just as quite a lot of youngsters will have taken up tennis in the light of Andy Murray's recent run to the Wimbledon final, I'm sure more youngsters will be looking to get into cycling. So who knows, we could be, through the success that we've just been referring to, we could be spawning at least one more generation of great British cyclists. A generation ago, when I was a wee slip of a lad, England were, by all accounts, the laughingstock of the cricketing world. They were certainly, and I remember this vividly, certainly always playing second fiddle to the likes of the West Indies, Australia, and to a lesser degree India and Pakistan, but we were still struggling to beat those nations as well. Over the course of the last decade, it's fair to say it's been something of a golden era for English cricket. They won the Ashes in 2005 and again in 2009, defending them in 2010-11 out in Australia. The first time we had done that since 1986-87. You see, a generation ago, and that was when, if you like, we started to see the wheels come off English cricket following that great success of the mid-80s. It all went pear-shaped in the late 80s stroke early 90s. England, number one in the world. They're still number one in the world, but as I said last week on SportsCall, they face their toughest test, quite literally, for some time. They're taking on South Africa, currently ranked number 3 behind Australia, but if South Africa come out on top at the end of this 3-test series, then they will take over from England as world number 1. And indeed, were South Africa to whitewash England, then England could well find themselves in 3rd spot behind Australia, who of course they take on next summer here in England. England versus South Africa. The first test took place at the Oval last week. England were in a pretty good position at the end of day 1, but then it all just blew up in their faces. South Africa asserting and going on to win very comfortably by an innings and 12 runs. It's over 600 runs made for the loss of just 2 wickets. Quite incredible. Hassan Amla making 300, the first South African batsman to do so at test level, and also Graham Smith, the captain, and all-rounder Jacques Kallis netted tons as well. As I say, it's a 3-test series. It would be hard enough if England were taking on South Africa in a 5-test series, but only 2 tests remain. The second one is at Headingley, starting next week. So although it may seem that we've got a little bit of time yet, believe you me, time waits for no man, and England really do need to get their house in order if they are to get back to winning ways. And of course, if they do draw the test with South Africa, in other words, if they win either this test or the one at Lord's without losing anymore, England would indeed retain their place at the top of the world rankings. So watch this space. This time next week we'll be talking about that second test at Headingley in a bit more detail. Let us know your thoughts on that. Should England make changes? And if so, should they be wholesale, or should there just be a little bit of tinkering? There is, of course, that phrase that I'm reminded of frequently. Form is temporary, but class is permanent. And I think it's fair to say that England have proved many times over the last few years they have got the class. They've also, for the lion's share of that time, had the form. But now they just need to knuckle down, maybe make a little bit of tinkering happen in order to go into the Headingley test with the best chance of victory. I know that we've got a couple of comments from you listeners regarding what England should do in preparation for that second test, so I shall save my personal opinion until we come to cover that in the fans' thoughts section. Fan thought. Yes, exactly. Time to put my teeth back in. Okay, moving on from cricket to golf. And last Sunday, the Australian Adam Scott appeared to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory in the 2012 Open at Lytham. By all accounts, and this is the view of golfing experts, which is why I say by all accounts, as big a golf fan as I am, I haven't been following every single Open for 30, 40, 50 years. A lot of people have, and their view was that the 2012 Open will not go down in history as a particularly exciting event, particularly inspiring. At least that was the way it was looking round about 5 o'clock, 5:30 on Sunday. Then Scott started to, for want of a better phrase, blow up, do a Devon lock with the finishing line just in sight. And through to take the victory came South African legend Ernie Els, taking his 4th major title, his 2nd Open, his first in 10 years. He won the 2002 Open. So Ernie Els, he was somewhere between 40 to 1 and 100 to 1 to win at Lytham last week. He won, he came through. Scott needed a birdie on the final hole to force a playoff, and he missed that, and so Els took the title. Back to winning ways for Ernie Els, who was controversially declined an invitation to this year's Masters at Augusta. I'm sure he'll be back in Augusta. That's one of the most beautiful golf courses in the world, isn't it? If not the most beautiful golf course. I love watching the coverage on television, and you feel you just want to break through the screen and walk onto that carpet-like course. Well, I won't be doing that next year. Well, I might be, but it's most unlikely. Ernie Els almost certainly will be. So well done to Ernie Els. Some encouraging performances from Ryder Cup stars in Europe. Luke Donald, the world number one, he's never too far away from the shake-up when it comes to the big majors. But alas, he still remains without one. Hopefully that will change. And of course there is one more major in the golf world this year. That's the US PGA taking place next month. If you're a golfing fan on an international level, a national level, or perhaps even a local level, get in touch. There are, of course, numerous golf clubs and golf competitions around the area here in East Lancashire. If you're involved in East Lancashire golf in any way, get in touch. But of course, you could be listening to this programme from anywhere in the world. And if you're involved in golf or any other sport for that matter, all you have to do is get involved. Simon Kerrin SportsCall at gmail.com. That's Simon Kerrin SportsCall at gmail.com. It really couldn't be easier. If you are a Facebook friend, you can get in touch via Facebook. And I'll be telling you later on how you can get involved as a sponsor, if indeed you wish to do so. Or perhaps you know somebody who would be interested in sponsoring one of our regular slots here on the programme. It is a great way to promote yourself and your business, and it is extremely cost effective to do so. And you can rest assured that SportsCall will promote you and your business to the rafters and back again. So I'll be telling you more about sponsorship opportunities a little later on in the programme. For now, overtime has come to round up the latest developments at the three main teams in East Lancashire football: Blackburn Rovers, Burnley and Accrington Stanley. We begin with news concerning Blackburn Rovers. Earlier this week, it was confirmed that former defensive legend Colin Hendry was rejoining the Ewood Park club as a defensive coach. And having watched them last season, all I can say is how they needed him. Blackburn's problem last season was certainly not scoring goals, it was keeping them out. And that is probably the single greatest reason why they find themselves in the Championship rather than the Premiership. In an effort, though, to get out of the Championship and return to the Premiership, Rovers have been quite busy in the transfer market thus far, signing a couple of Portuguese players along with various others, along with, for example, Leon Best from Newcastle. And mixed opinions about him, some people saying that he's still unproven, other people pointing out to the fact that he did quite well when played at Newcastle over the course of the last couple of years. So give me your thoughts on that. Blackburn Rovers, however, we know tonight are set to complete the signing of two more Portuguese players, Paulo Jorge and Eden Jr. Jorge, who is 19, is due to sign from FC Porto, where he has played in midfield for the Primeira Liga Champions youth team. And striker Eden Jr., also known as Edinho, he's 18 and previously had a trial at Celtic. He will be joining from SC Olonense, or something very similar. Rovers manager Steve Keane told the club website that in his opinion both players have great ability and potential, and we're delighted at the prospect of adding them to our squad. And Rovers have already added two Portuguese players from earlier on this summer, namely striker Nuno Gomes, vastly experienced forward, and youngster Fabio Nunes. So if you're a Blackburn Rovers fan, give us your thoughts on those signings and the other players who might be venturing either into or out of Ewood Park this summer. Danny Murphy, of course, has arrived as well to bolster Blackburn's promotion challenge, or at least what is hoped will be a Blackburn promotion challenge. This time last week I was telling you that Burnley had signed central defender Adam Shackell. Well, they have now made him captain, the former Derby County player, and they've also signed Joe Mills from Reading. Reading, of course, preparing for their first season back in the Premiership. They won the Championship. As a West Ham fan, I'm inclined to ask God knows how, but then again, in the cold light of day, I'm just glad but we are back up there with them. And Joe Mills has joined from Reading on loan. Obviously, very highly rated, both by Reading, who are happy to see him getting first-team experience, and, more relevantly, the Burnley manager Eddie Howe. Accrington Stanley news now, trialist Brian Schmeichel. No relation of Peter, and the spelling is completely different. Schmikle. He scored the winner last Saturday as Stanley defeated Blackburn Rovers 1-0 in a friendly. And I think it has to be said straight away at this stage not to read too much into the outcome of friendly games. And what's happening at the moment, Blackburn are doing it, Stanley are doing it, West Ham are doing it as well. They've got large squads, and those squads have been broken up into groups, and they're playing umpteen different friendlies pretty much at the same time. So you could have some first-team players for Blackburn playing in that game at Accrington, and some other first-team players may have been involved elsewhere, and so on and so forth. Schmeichel scored the winner in that 1-0 win, and another player taking part in that friendly last week was former Huddersfield Town player Aidan Chippendale. He was in trial, and that game he's been on trial for a while at Stanley, but I can now confirm he has joined the Crown Ground club, and Stanley manager Paul Cook delighted to have him on board. Speaking of Pauls, Clitheroe manager Paul Moore continues to make his mark at Saltergate. In the first pre-season game, Clitheroe defeated Main Road 1-0, and then pretty much the same squad proceeded to draw 2-2 with Runcorn Linnets. Several more games are lined up before the big kick-off, and that's as true of Clitheroe as it is of Blackburn, Burnley, Accrington, and so on and so forth. Hard to believe that in just a few weeks' time we'll be getting ready for the big kick-off in the new 2012-2013 season. Give us your thoughts, your predictions, your hopes, and in some cases your fears. Simon Kerrin SportsCall at gmail.com. That's Simon Kerrin SportsCall at gmail.com. Get in touch with me, give me your views and opinions, and I will be sure to read them out on next week's programme. OK, moving on now from football to cricket. And once again, thanks go to Trevor Baxter of the Ribblesdale League for keeping me fully up to date with all the developments in that league. He did that 2 years ago when I presented SportsCall on Ribble Valley Media, and he's very kindly doing it once again. So the Senior League action from last week was played on Saturday the 21st of July. Barnoldswick versus Oswald Twistle Emanuel. Of course, a repeat of the Ramsbottom Cup semi-final, which Barnoldswick won. They also won this game. They batted first, all out for 97. Not particularly clever, you might think. But then Oswald Twistle Emanuel were all out for 57. As Barnoldswick's Imran Khalid took a very impressive 6 for 17. Barnoldswick winning by 40 runs. Clitheroe versus Baxenden. This was a quite incredible game. Another low-scoring match. Baxenden all out for 56. And Clitheroe, drum roll, all out for 24. Incredible. All out for 24. Not even getting to halfway in the run chase. Baxenden's Liam Riley taking 6 for 18 as Baxenden won by 32 runs. And that would have been an extremely pleasant journey home for the men from Baxenden. Edenfield versus Ribblesdale Wanderers. Ribblesdale batted first, 210 for 7. David Howard making 55. In reply, Edenfield were all out for 117. Brannon Varley taking 6 for 66. Some very impressive bowling figures last week, weren't there? Ribblesdale winning by 93 runs. There were no impressive figures to talk about at Great Harwood. Their game with Cherry Tree was unfortunately abandoned. Next up, we have Padiham versus Earby. Earby batted first, 184 for 8. Top scoring with 73 was Chris Walton. Padiham getting home by 6 wickets, 185 for 4. Callum Clark, 53 not out. Reed versus Settle. Settle batted first, 245 for 4. Amjad, 68. Tiernan Hamill an unbeaten 66, and Tom Davidson top scoring with 72. In reply, Reed all out for 128, a major blow to their hopes of closing the gap or at least maintaining the challenge to Bonolswick for the title. Amjad, who had excelled with the bat, also excelled with the ball, 5 for 67. Eddie Reed taking 5 for 48. Reed all out for 128. Settle winning extremely comfortably by 117 runs. And finally, for now, Salisbury versus Worley. Worley in winning ways last week and in winning ways once again this week. They batted first, 196 for 5. Wilkin Motter, who really has hit a rich vein of form with both bat and ball, he top scored for them with 59. Salisbury all out for 134. Motter, that man again, taking 7 for 43. An unbeaten 67 from John Wharton was the highlight of Salisbury's reply. Worley winning by 62 runs. And so Bonolswick go into the big Ramsbottom Cup final this Sunday in top form. Baxenden will be delighted too, having snatched victory from the jaws of defeat with their incredible routing of Clitheroe for just 24. One of the performances of the year as they look to keep pace with Bonolswick. Reed currently in second spot. As it stands, Bonolswick 29 points clear of Reed. And of course, Reed slipping up against Settle. Baxenden a further 3 points behind Reed. This time next week, I'll be reviewing that final between Bonolswick and Baxenden, which is taking place on Sunday, the 29th of July at Oswald Cricket Ground. Now let's move from the Ribblesdale League to the Lancashire League and focus on the action of Sunday, the 22nd of July. Accrington versus Todmorden. Accrington batted first, 144 all out. Todmorden 91 all out. Accrington winning by 53 runs. Bacup versus Haslingden. Bacup all out for 131. Haslingden 132 for 2 as they cruise to an 8-wicket victory. Burnley versus Rishton. Rishton batted first, 150 for 9. This was an exciting finish. Burnley all out for 143. Rishton prevailing by just 7 runs. And another very exciting finish. Colne versus Church. Church batted first, 130 all out. Colne 124 all out. Colne falling short by 6 runs. Defending champions and leaders Lower House were at home to Enfield. Lower House 164 for 8. Enfield winning by 8 wickets, 165 for 2. That top of the table clash there. We'll be looking at the impact that result has on the league standings very shortly. 2 more games to get through before we do that. Ramsbottom versus Nelson. Nelson batting first, 106 all out. Ramsbottom cruising home for a 9-wicket win, 109 for 1. And lastly, Rawtenstall versus East Lancs. East Lancs batted first, 146 all out. Another pretty tight finish here. Rawtenstall 147 for 7. So another wicket or 2, and it really would have been squeaky bum time for Rawtenstall, but they prevailed to win by 3 wickets. So the top of the Foster's Lancashire League table as it stands, Lower House played 15, 145 points. Enfield 16, 138. Todmorden third, 127 from 16. Church 123 from 16 in fourth. And Accrington played 15, 120. So it's unlikely that anybody beneath that top 5 would be involved in the title shake-up, but you never know. I've been wrong with predictions like this before, so it's extremely possible that I might be once again. And so the time has come for me to move from the roundup of football and cricket to arguably the most important part of the entire programme, your fans' thoughts. Your opportunity to get involved with your sporting news, views, likes and dislikes. Remember, Very easy to get in touch with me here on SportsCall. Send an email to simonkerrinssportscall@gmail.com. That's simonkerrinssportscall@gmail.com. You can also, of course, get involved via Facebook. If you know my mobile phone, you're very welcome to send me a text. And if you bump into me in the street, or in the dog inn in Worley, or Booth's Supermarket, it doesn't really matter. If you've got a sporting opinion, you're very welcome to share it with me, as the following people have done. Colin from Darwin, he's got in touch to say, I really enjoyed the return of Sports Call last week. Do you have any plans for more fans forums now? Just to recap, or in some cases to inform new listeners, 2-3 years ago when Blackburn Rovers and Burnley were in the Premiership, we had a few fans forums during the course of the season, representatives from both Blackburn and Burnley. We didn't need to call the Lancashire Police Riot Squad, which was very pleasant and something that surprised a few of you. All joking aside, very enjoyable, good debate, positive debate from two sets of fans caring passionately for their club. The answer to your question, Colin, is yes. I would like to do some kind of fans forum, but you've got to bear in mind, but at the moment I'm recording this from home, so I haven't really got full studio access in terms of Studio 1 and 2 and green rooms and so on and so forth. Maybe that will change. Some of you seem to think it should do. I'm too modest to agree with you, but I think you get the impression that I might have just done so. I do have plans for fans forums. I do have plans for sports-related events coming up, hopefully in the course of the next few months. Where are we? The 27th of July. Hopefully at least one such event before Christmas would be nice, and I will of course keep you posted on that in the weeks to come. Claret Eddie from Accrington says, I'm delighted to see how Burnley are shaping up. I can't wait for the two big games versus Rovers. Well, right now, I think that is what both Blackburn and Burnley fans are having at least one eye on in terms of the new season fixtures. They don't play each other immediately, but I think such is the rivalry and the intensity of that rivalry in East Lancashire that the countdown is already underway. Tony, who I'm sure contributed last week, he didn't tell us where he was from last week. He hasn't done this week, but he's got in touch, and that's what matters. He said it would seem that as well as Swahili, Steve Keane can speak Portuguese. He seems to be obsessed with signing Portuguese players. In the unlikely event that Keane goes, I foresee a problem. What if the incoming manager doesn't rate all of Keane's signings? Well, this is something that I have raised in the past. I remember raising it on Sports Call a couple of years ago, not, of course, in relation to Steve Keane at that time, but relating in general to situations where a new manager comes in, the previous manager has signed a load of players that the new manager doesn't rate, and if it's outside of the transfer window period, then for want of a better word, that manager is lumbered with the players, and they're lumbered with him for the foreseeable future. The smart money would, despite all that has happened at Ewood Park, still be on Steve Keane starting the new season as Rovers manager. Of course, in the worst case scenario for Rovers, if they have a bad start, then it may be that, well, we have some kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, where people, a mass protest, even greater than what has happened so far, some kind of mutiny, a revolution, that's the word, a revolution, that would herald the end of Steve Keane's tenure at Blackburn Rovers. If you have a view on that, if you have a view on Tony's comments, then you know how to get in touch with me here on Sports Call. Jeff from Preston says, England got a hiding at the cricket, but hopefully it will do them good. I feel sorry for Ravi Bopara, but I don't think he is up to the rigours of international cricket. I would rest him and bring in Steve Finn, an extra bowler, as needs must at Headingley. Interesting. He's implying, is he not, that our main problem is bowling South Africa out. We'll get the runs within reason. We really do need to be posing a much greater threat to their bowlers, of course. Amla a triple century. Smith, a century. Callis, a century. Fantastic performance from South Africa as they won that first test at the Oval by an innings and 12 runs. And Maria from Rishton, thank you for getting in touch, Maria. Maria says, "Arise, Sir Bradley Wiggins. A fantastic effort from a true hero. All the very best to Britain's athletes at the Olympic Games, particularly the cyclists. They've done us proud." Thank you very much indeed. We've also had a message in from Ian in South London, and he's echoing a joke that I've seen doing the rounds on Facebook and other social media. He is a Chelsea fan. He is very pleased with what is happening at Chelsea, and he says it's ironic, isn't it? He says after years of diving and rolling around from Didier Drogba, he leaves and we finally get an Oscar. And of course he's referring to the Brazilian midfielder Oscar, only 20 years of age, extremely highly rated, likened by many to Kaká. And if he's half as good as Kaká, certainly half as good as Kaká in his prime, then he is going to be some player. And he signed for Chelsea in a deal reported to be worth around £25 million. And of course, as we count down to the big kick-off, the 2012 and 13, we'll be rounding up all the main transfers of the summer, speculating as to what might yet happen, because of course the transfer window remains open until the 31st of August. If you've got a view on that, who your team should be signing, who they should be selling, who they shouldn't be signing, or who they shouldn't be selling, you know what to do. Simon Kerrin's SportsCall at gmail.com. We're coming to the end of this week's programme, so this is the ideal opportunity for me to talk about the guest slot, the notice features, and also sponsorship. Now, in the past on SportsCall, when we aired on Ribble Valley Media, we interviewed a glut of sporting celebrities. Snooker legend Steve Davis, former Blackburn manager Sam Allardyce, now at West Ham, Rovers midfielder David Dunn, Accrington Stanley chief executive Rob Hayes, former Stanley manager John Coleman, and apologies to anyone else who I have not just mentioned. And hopefully, over time, we will be interviewing people of a similarly high calibre. And I really do mean that. I take SportsCall very seriously, as you know, and hopefully you do. Hopefully you continue to enjoy the programme. And my aim is to make SportsCall a great vehicle for sport, not just for professional sports people, but for amateur sports people as well. If you've just come back from the gym and turned in a personal best, then tell me about it. If you email me or text me or do that strange thing of actually communicating to me face to face, I will, I promise, spread the word on next week's programme. This time last week we were looking back at the tremendous achievement of Whalley accountant Mark Derbyshire, who recently completed his second triathlon, 31 years after his first one. You'll recall my telling you, you will if you were listening last week, that Mark took part in the Windermere Olympic distance triathlon in the Lake District on Sunday the 1st of July. He ran a great 1500 metres, a good cycle ride on a hilly 43 kilometres, and a very tired, slowly run 10 kilometres. Why did he do that? Well, Mark has always been a triathlete at heart. He's always followed the growth of the sport in the UK, and he's therefore delighted to see a resurgence in the triathlon. His first triathlon, completed back in 1981 at Ribblesdale Pool in Clitheroe, is unofficially the first ever triathlon to have been held on these shores. Mark was 19 then, he's 50 now, and as well as doing the second triathlon for the love of the sport and for the fitness and well-being that come from it, he was looking to raise money for the National Stroke Association, a charity very close indeed to Mark's heart, given that his mum passed away in 2009 following a stroke. And a few people have asked me if I would once again provide the contact details for donations to the National Stroke Association. Two ways of doing so. you can send a cheque payable to the Stroke Association, care of Derbyshire and Co., and that's Derbyshire with an A, i.e. DARBYSHIRE and Co., Nimrod House, NYMROD, 85 King Street, Whalley, WHALLEY, Lancashire, BB7 9SW. Alternatively, you can log on to the Just Giving website, www.justgiving.com/Mark with a K hyphen Derbyshire 1. So justgiving.com/Mark hyphen Derbyshire 1. Just remains for me to tell you how you can get involved as a sponsor, or how somebody known to you can get involved as a sponsor should they wish to do so. Now we have, as you will know if you're a regular listener to Sports Call and you've been listening very carefully to what I've been saying for the last few weeks, and perhaps for the period between 2009 and 2010 as well, we do have our regular slots. We have the review of the sporting week, in which I round up the key sporting events of the past 7 days. We also have the football slot, the cricket slot, the guest slot, and the notices slot, where people, certainly in school time, typically ring in or email in and tell us what they're doing and what charity they're looking to raise money for, etc., etc. Each of those slots is available for sponsorship at just £50 per month. £50 per month. Not bad if you're looking for a vehicle to promote yourself and your business. And you will not just be promoted here on Sports Call, you'll be promoted as well in all the other accompanying literature and accompanying media that accompanies the programme. We are on Twitter, for example, at SK Sports Call. At SK Sports Call. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we have the website, of course, www.simonkerrinssportscall.webeden.co.uk, and that email address once again, simonkerrinssportscall@gmail.com. So if you're listening and your business would be interested, or indeed could be interested, in sponsoring one of those Sports Call slots, all you need to do is get in touch with me, and I'm sure we can sort something out with a minimum of delay. If you know somebody who might be interested, then by all means either pass my details to them or their details to me, and I can then take things forward with a minimum of delay so that we can start getting the sponsorship show on the road. Well, it's that time of the week once again. The time has come for me to say thank you for listening. Thanks to everybody who got in touch to ensure that their comments were read out on this week's show. Hopefully you will get in touch over the course of the next week, so that when I come to record this programme next week, I'm reading out your comments, almost as if it was live. I'm doing it live from my point of view, but of course this is pre-recorded. We don't go out live anymore, but hopefully that will change, and hopefully you will have no trouble whatsoever in accessing this broadcast on YouTube, be it directly on YouTube or via Facebook or Twitter. I'm Simon Kerrins. You've been great for listening. Have a wonderful first week of the London 2012 Olympics. I sincerely hope that Team GB will do likewise, and I look forward to your company next week. All the very best for now. Thank you. Bye-bye.